Hi, folks. A couple technical difficulties getting in today, but I think we're doing okay now. Room looks a little bit different. I moved the tables around. This is Online Learning in a Hurry, episode 12. Today we're talking about teacher presence. That idea of teacher presence is one that I think we all kind of instinctively have a feeling about, but it's maybe one that we don't always think about, right? When you walk into a classroom, a face-to-face classroom, you have a feeling, you have a suite of things that you do. And what I'd like us to do today is think about a discussion inside of a classroom. So let's imagine for a second that you're in a flexible face-to-face classroom and you've got tables and students are breaking into groups. You can do this in a lecture hall with 150 people if you're doing something like a think, pair, share, where you ask the students to develop an idea with the person next to them. But let's think about it as round tables. And let's say there's, 50 people in that room. And I want you to think about the ways in which you are present in that room, the kinds of things that you do. So one of the things that you do is you explain the rules of engagement, right? So you get up there and you'll go, okay, so we're going to do this activity where we're going to have different questions at each of the tables. And then you're going to sit at a table for 10 minutes and then I'm going to signal that it's time to move to the next discussion. And I'm going to circulate around the room. And between each discussion, I'm going to give like a 5-minute piece of feedback based on the things I've seen. So there's an activity I've run face-to-face, 100 times. So there's all those pieces that you're doing, right? You're setting the tone for the activity, the way in which you speak and communicate with people, give a sense of what's appropriate in terms of how you talk to people, the kind of words that you use. And then also you set the time limit and the boundaries for how much work people are going to do. And you've also given a sense of how you're going to give your feedback. If I was going to move online with a similar activity, let's say I was going to use a discussion forum for that, I do exactly the same kind of thing, right? So you have to have a really nice, clear description about how you're going to do it, and people will notice that. It doesn't have to be a gigantic video, though a video of this length would work just fine. Something you can turn on, record in 2 or 3 minutes, set the tone, and then post it somewhere. Can be a nice way of setting a verbal tone, give people a sense of how formal or informal that conversation is going to be. Just that sense of formal, informal is one of those things we do when we speak all the time. We don't necessarily give that tone online. So sometimes when we write, we feel like we have to be very formal. And then the student response is going to raise to that level. They're going to assume that that's the way we speak here. And maybe you're going to lose some of the sort of nuance of the discussion that you might want otherwise. So the way that you write those things, give a real sense of who you are as a person. And it's the first kind of step in teacher presence, the way that you announce yourself, right? Which is what allows students to orient themselves to what they're expected to do. And then from then, one of the things that I've seen with people who move online for the first time is they have a tendency to try to respond to everything, right? So if student posts, they feel the need to respond. Student posts, they feel the need to respond. And then after their first online experience, they go, I'm never doing a discussion forum again. Oh my God, there's so much work. But what I challenge you to do is think more of what you do in an online space. Normally, I don't make that straight comparison and say face-to-face and online, you do the same thing. But in this case, it kind of is. In that group discussion, when there are 7 tables of 7 or 8 people, you don't go to every table and respond to every question. You let students talk together. And then you may pick up a couple of things or hear a couple of themes as you wander around that classroom, and then come back to the front of the room maybe and say, look, I was listening to the conversation. I noticed that, this seems to be a theme. I had a conversation with that person over there, and I was trying to, their perspective was maybe not what we were looking for. So I thought I would add these kinds of facts or this kind of perspective. That can be a really nice way of responding to a discussion forum. So if you go in and you answer everybody in the discussion forum, suddenly it just becomes an assignment for the students where they write something with an expectation that the faculty member is going to respond. If you set up the expectation that students are going to talk to each other and you respond with, I respond with a blog post, but you can respond with a new discussion thread or a generalized comment in your learning management system that says, hey, last week I saw this discussion, I saw these themes come out of it. We need to think about it in this way. And now we're going to go forward with this new idea that now I think needs to be covered based on what I've seen you guys talking about. That kind of social interaction makes you feel present to people. It makes people feel heard, but it also allows for the discussion to develop. So you should have points of contact. Your presence is important. Sometimes that presence is a 2-minute video maybe. I would suggest that presence should almost never be a 2-hour video, but I mean, I guess I could imagine circumstances where that would be. I think places where you give your opinion, but don't necessarily make a judgment are really important pieces of teacher presence as well. So getting into a conversation, not I have ruled that your conversation is good, nice job, but rather, wow, you know what? I hadn't thought of that way. It's really interesting that you put it in that way. And that has made me think of this other thing that I think might be relevant to your discussion. So the way in which you encourage conversation and you open up that window is another important piece of your presence. But I really encourage you not to think of everything that happens inside of a learning management system as an assignment that has been submitted to you, but rather a place in which the conversation or the discussion has been captured that allows you to be at every one of those 9 tables that are in your room at once, hear everything that was said, but that doesn't mean you need to respond to all of those things. Those main points that you think are really important, I mean, this is maybe the overall message. Your responsibility, I would say, as an educator, is to bring across those things that you think are vitally important so that people can grasp those and understand them and carry them forward. So you're the representative of those ideas, not necessarily the adjudicator of every discussion. Now, that being said, the one exception to that is anytime somebody is being called out or being treated unfairly, or where you see someone dominating a certain kind of conversation. At that point, you have to step in as a mediator, right? So the same way in class, if you saw somebody getting into a shouting match or whatever else, you would intervene. I would suggest that you need to do that online. You need to do it fast and you need to do it clear, right? So that's another piece of your presence. So that people have this idea that if something does go awry, that your presence is there and then you've got the backs of people maybe who are being intimidated in ways that are not fair and equitable. So, and I would do it early with a small infraction and do it, you know, in a reasonable way, but just make it clear to people that, yes, I'm looking through these. I'm not responding to all of them, but I am here and I am responding and I am the representative of positive discourse, right? So I think all of those pieces of teacher presence are really important ones. Being clear about what your expectations are, making sure that you allow room for people to discuss, not thinking of each posting as a relationship between you and a student, but rather between students, but then always being there in a way that is consistent. That's not 3 o'clock in the morning, I show up and I respond to every comment that's there. Not that at all, but regularly in different ways. Sometimes just hearing your voice is important, so recording small videos can be really good. But that may not be the way that you're comfortable. It could be a nicely written post. And it doesn't necessarily need to be directly in those discussions. It just has to come out of them. So if you can reference an entire 400 posts in a discussion forum and make one post as a response, and that cites a couple of them, that makes people feel heard as well. So teacher presence is a complex thing. It's about creating a fair place where people know what the rules are, but it's also about you bringing your humanity to that space and letting them see the things that they would see in a face-to-face classroom, but in a digital way. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.